So let's just get started. And
Okay.
as I guess he'll probably join any second, but yeah, meeting shall come to order. Welcome to the Rules and Government Relations meeting of October 26th, 2020. It's 5 p.m. Thanks for making time to do this for a second time in a week, both of you. I suppose we probably, JP's here. I suppose we probably don't have any minutes.
How is JP here?
JP just, I just saw that he was requesting to, I just admitted him.
Oh,
Is he not coming
I
up?
only see 3 people.
That's weird. I saw his name pop up. I hit admit.
Okay.
We'll probably do it again.
Yeah, weird. All right, well, I'll keep an eye out for that.
And I've got myself as co-host, so I can do it. Tom, you can just run the meeting. There he is.
Did you do minutes? You did minutes, didn't you?
I did minutes for
I
the
know. We
meeting of
accept
the
those minutes.
22nd.
Well, I'm sorry. I must have missed that email. Do you mind if we approve them at the next meeting then?
That's totally fine.
Fine, I'll withdraw the motion.
I guess if you two know, then I could just abstain and we could vote. If you,
Doesn't matter. We'll vote at the next meeting.
okay, cool. Okay, and then there's Dan.
Are you seeing people trying to join? Wow, I didn't see
well-
any of these people. Strange. Okay,
I've just got a great reaction time, Peg. That's
apparently.
Hi, everyone. So, yeah, let me lay out sort of the where we are on this, and then I'm sure there will be some opinions. Basically, I was comparing what we have in our rules, which I had written almost 2 years ago, to what we have in the draft ordinance for ranked choice voting at a citywide level. And I realized there was a couple of points where maybe we had gone in a different direction. But the sort of the bigger issue is there's going to be 8 people voting. And so when you have an election with 4,000 people voting, the chances of a tie are considerably less than when you have 8 people vote. And so I wanted to make sure that our rules had, given that there's 5 candidates and, there's some people who feel pretty strongly about this, I wanted to make sure that our rules had a clear idea of what we should do under each situation where there could potentially be a tie. And those included basically 3 scenarios where I just wanted to sort of, and by the way, if anyone at any point gets confused and wants me to back up, just interrupt me on this, because I want to make sure everyone understands what I'm talking about, and sometimes I can get too fast. Councilor Coniff.
You have not confused me. I just forgot to tell you that I have a hard stop at 6 o'clock.
Hard stop 6 o'clock. Okay, then I'll try and move quickly on this. So the first situation is a situation where, and I don't think this is going to happen, but just I want to be prepared for it because it could happen at a future point, where 4 people vote for one candidate as their first choice and 4 vote for another. So right in the first round, we're deadlocked. The second is a scenario where in the first round, we have, say 3 different people who each cast their vote for one person. So there's 3 candidates that each get 1 vote. How do we decide which of those 3 candidates gets eliminated to move into the next round? And then the third situation would be a scenario where at some later round, but not the first one, it resolves down to 2 candidates and it's a 4-on-4 tie. Those are sort of the 3 situations where I could see it being, so really what I really the question is a tie on the first round, which makes it so that we don't know how to go forward, and then like a tie, like when it finally resolves. Does that make sense so far? Yes, Councilor Rist.
It makes sense to me. I'm sorry, I'm dense. Maybe Dan or you can go over the math, because how does this happen if our second and third place votes on our list get counted? When you say first round, right?
Yeah,
So many people have a number one choice.
Yeah.
Does that automatically mean, I guess Dan is counting, he's gonna move into how, because we don't have a 5-person majority for any one candidate.
yeah,
Somebody, and I guess it's Dan, who's doing the math, figures out who should win once we do the ranked choice voting mathematics by eliminating the candidate that got the least votes would be
Yes.
eliminated, correct?
yes. And
So if there was a 3, 2, 2, and then 2 candidates got 0, those would be gone.
yeah,
I just like some explanation on it, and I should know it by now because we went over it a lot. But
well, let me share the screen with the current rule as proposed, just so that we're all looking at the same thing.
sure,
And then I'll sort of try and Paul St. Pierre's here, cool.
what I'm getting at, Tom, is you say the first round of voting. Is the
Yeah.
first round of voting including doing the mathematics for ranked choice voting to see if somebody gets that majority using ranked choice voting by doing the elimination process?
Right. So
Am
what?
I reading that right?
Okay, I've got a couple hands. Can I try explaining this and then I'll call on people, or?
Sure.
Okay. So what'll happen is everyone's going to cast, and it sounds like what it's going to do is everyone's going to send an email in, right, with their votes. And those are going to be there. In the first round, everyone's vote counts for their first choice. So whoever you put first, that's who your vote counts for. Now, if one person gets 5 or more votes in that first round, it's over and there's no need for a second round. That'll just be, we look at it, okay, candidate A has 5 votes or they have 6 votes, right? They're the winner. There's no need to discuss this any further. It's just, that's the end of it. Does that make sense so far?
Mm-hmm.
That's just the exact same as we have anything else. Yeah, Dan.
It might be helpful to illustrate this. Can I share the screen while you're explaining this? I think it might help.
Sure, I'll stop sharing.
Or you have to give him on. You can add many hosts as you want.
Yeah, sure. JP, what's up?
JP, you're muted, buddy. JP, you're muted.
Nope.
I think there's something wrong with your mic because I'm not hearing anything, JP.
Okay, this is good. Thank you, Dan. This looks good.
I just thought that as Tom explains this, it's going to help to visualize what's going on.
Yep.
So obviously the election, starts like this, But this is a scenario that's not unrealistic that Tom is talking about. While Tom is explaining this, I'll see if I can sort of illustrate what he's talking about using this.
Thank you, Dan. Perfect.
Sure.
So, and JP, yeah, cut in at any point if you can get your mic working.
No.
I wish I could hear what you're saying.
Can't hear you.
So yeah, the idea is if there's a situation where one candidate in round 1 gets 5 votes, then they win. But if nobody gets 5 votes, then what we look to do is figure out who got the least votes. Maybe there's one candidate that only got 1 vote. If that candidate, in that case, that candidate is eliminated, and whoever casts their vote for that candidate in the next round, their 1 vote will count for whoever their second choice is. So whoever they put as their second choice, they'll come in. Then we recount. Does somebody have 5 votes? If not, we continue the same process.
Here's my confusion. When you go from round 1 to round 2 to round 3, Dan is doing mathematics. We're not actually re-voting.
No, we
That's what I
vote
meant.
once.
When you say round 1, you're talking about the first time we go through it. Then Dan does the elimination process as he's the counter until we get someone that gets 5 votes based on this. If
Exactly.
after what, and you're saying in a tie situation, if after what, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, we don't get it, we have a tie, we have to have a system for that?
Then we just need to have an agreement, you know, in the rules about how we're going to handle that, because we don't want to be talking about what's the fair way to do it then once we already have, you know, an idea of like, it would seem unfair to be making any decision about that then. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about.
No, I understand it
doing
completely.
that
I was
situation.
confused whether a round meant we had to submit new votes. My feeling on it is you're close to what we need to do. We simply go in. If there's 2 candidates, we simply go in and re-vote after hearing. It's like a jury to me. We just re-vote again.
No,
You don't want to re-vote, then what do you do?
I don't think that's what we're saying.
Well, so, okay. Here's JP again. Paul, I see your hand. Let me just make this point and then if you want to say something. So normally the way that this works in ranked choice voting is that if there's a tie, you go to the previous round. Who had more votes in the previous round, and then they're the winner, right? Because there's the idea of if you have 2 groups of people and one of them a lot of people really like and the other one a lot of people like, but some of them it's not their first, like the idea is that indicates that that person is a more popular candidate. So usually in any subsequent round, if there's a tie, you look at who had the more support in the previous round, and that's the person who wins. Does that make sense?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm just gonna have to trust you guys on it. I just thought we had to go in and debate and re-vote. If this didn't exist, we would be doing that anyway, but okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess Peg understands it.
Paul, I saw your hand.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. I know I missed public speak, but I'm sure it's okay. So let me just say I'm grateful to have been nominated. Thank you, JP. And I hope that I'm successful. But as a member of the public, I would hope that you would also consider my input here on this. There doesn't appear to be an easy or fair way to resolve a tie vote situation. Whether or not you have ranked choice voting, when you have 5 candidates and 8 votes split between them, you could get a 4-3-1, and then Tom, your situation, it works, but there's no resolution. If there's a 4-4, a 3-3-2, a 2-2-2-2, these are all possible. You could have a 2-2-1-1-1, which becomes a 2-2-2-1, which becomes a 3-2-2, and then you don't have 50% anywhere. And whose votes do you cancel out? It doesn't.
So that's what we're
there's-
working on, is
I
trying to.
understand.
God,
So
Peg really
also-
wants to say something.
I'm going to just say this point of order. I have a problem with us not even debating this yet and having someone from the public participate in the debate. We haven't even gotten to an understanding of what we're talking about yet. I appreciate, Paul, that you have thoughts on this, but I have an hour, less than an hour, and we still have to get to where we're debating this. And
I apologize, Peg. I thought public speak would precede the debate, but I'll wait.
it did.
I apologize. I'll
just
draw my comment then.
no. I mean, if you guys want to listen to it, have at it. But it's frustrating me that the 3 of us who are on this committee are not even on the same page right now, and that's creating a lot of anxiety for me.
I have a potential way out.
Well, let us talk about it first, Paul.
Okay.
So, Tom, it's your meeting, however you want
Okay.
to. I'm just
Let
voicing
me-
my opinion.
let me just pitch my proposal here, and then we can discuss the actual parts of the proposal that work or don't work. The idea is that, okay, let's talk about the first round. Right? Say that there's a tie in the first round, and we need to decide, it doesn't, right, and just to point out, this doesn't have to be a 4 and 4. This could be a 2, 2, 2, 2 tie. This could be a tie where there's 3 candidates that each get 1 vote, and we need to decide which of those candidates gets eliminated. These are all situations that theoretically could occur. And if they do, my idea was that in the case of a tie in the first round, what you do to figure out which candidate gets eliminated is you go and you look at, and this is in the language that I shared, if you guys want to look onto that. The idea is that whoever, like the candidate, you basically look at who got the most second choice votes. So if there's 2, let's say there's 2 candidates that each get 1 vote, one of them's got to get eliminated. Now, one of those candidates is the second choice of a lot of people, and the other one is the second choice of nobody. Then to break that tie, the one who's the second choice of nobody is the one that gets eliminated. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay. And does that generally seem like an acceptable, Paul, let me just finish my full proposal and then we'll get to that. Does that seem like an acceptable way forward?
Yeah.
And in the case that there is a tie for second choice votes, then you look at third choice votes and so on until it breaks, until there's a tie break.
I mean, isn't that the very definition of ranked choice voting?
Well, the thing is, sort of, but again, these sorts of things don't tend to happen in like a municipal election or a national election because there's more voters. So we just need to be more like, we just need to think a little bit harder about some of the stuff that, you know, that isn't really very likely to ever happen in a bigger election. But the idea is that, yeah, like if there's a tie between people in terms of their first choice votes, we look to the second choice votes. Now, after that first round, what we look to is the fact is how the person did in a previous round. So
Dan, could you do what he's doing right now with your example? Because that'll help me.
Yeah, okay. So Dan, here's one for you. Imagine that in the first round, one person gets 4 votes, one person gets 3 votes, one person gets 1 vote. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, the person who got the 1 vote gets eliminated. That's pretty simple. Had the least votes.
Okay.
1 vote transfers. So now we're at a 4-on-4 tie. My thought is that because you go to the previous round, because one of those candidates, right, in this case, we're talking candidate B, because that candidate had the most initial support, we decide that if there has to be a broken tie, and it's based on this. And this is what we do in the draft city ordinance, by the way.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Makes sense. Yes.
Okay. So that's my proposal. We can debate, and Paul, at this point, I'm happy to hear if you have an alternative idea. I'm happy to hear it out, and then we're going to deliberate. But like, I just wanted to, I wanted to make it clear that this is a situation that I think resolves nearly every situation that we're going to possibly find ourselves in on Wednesday. So I wanted to make the case for my point before we go forward. So Paul, at this point.
Actually, I think JP had his hand raised.
Oh, did he?
I don't even see JP. Is he here?
Out the bottom.
Oh, hey JP, sorry. I have you the people on the bar, so I didn't see you.
Oh, okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. To speak to the issue on the screen right now, where in the first round, one candidate gets 4, another one gets 3, and someone else gets 1. and then the one becomes a 4-4 tie, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the tie is broken by what I believe is the antithesis of ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is, hey, hold your nose and vote for 2. No, don't do that. Get your choice, your first choice. And if that's your first choice, then your second choice will go to your first choice. I mean, you go to the next choice, and that becomes the ideal of ranked choice voting. Or at least that's the way I hear the ads. To me, that in that very scenario, the person who put their vote on their first choice, one person, threw their vote away and really should have had the opportunity to vote a first choice again. So that's why I put forth a new proposal, because it just, what you're suggesting in this one scenario, I think doesn't coincide with the goals and ideals of ranked choice voting. Did I make myself clear on that, or shall I try again?
I think I get your point. I'm not sure I agree with your point, but I do think I understand it. That in that,
Well, essentially, it's a throwaway vote if you say, hey, ranked choice voting is great, and we're going to have your first choice. But then if that choice doesn't win, then your next choice will be counted, which then results in a tie. Oh, but we're going to break the tie because you threw away the vote on the one person situation. And that to me doesn't coincide with ranked choice voting.
So your alternative, JP, is to flip a coin?
The alternative is that if there is a tie and you need a tiebreaker, that and I sent this to all of you very late, very recently. The alternative is to go to a final vote with the top 2, with the tied parties, whoever they are. Try to break that vote one time. So you got your tie, scratch everything away, have a one-time vote after whatever process, a discussion by the candidates, further deliberation by the council, in an attempt to break the tie. Have your one attempt at breaking it, send those votes by email to a clerk. The clerk counts their votes, and hopefully the tie is broken. If it's not broken at that time, the suggestion is to flip coins among the tied candidates until somebody gets ahead in the final round and everyone else gets tails. But it would eliminate each round. If anyone who gets a tail, the person who gets the heads stays in the round. If there are more than one candidate, if there are only 2, first one round with only one head, that becomes the candidate elected and the tie is broken. That to me seems fairer than saying, oh, let's throw away a vote.
I don't agree that we're throwing away a vote, and I won't pick a candidate with a toss of a coin. I'd rather just continually debate until we resolve it. That's like a jury. You stay in the jury room.
I'd be happy with that too.
But I don't agree with you that what Tom is suggesting is the antithesis of ranked choice voting. I think you're wrong on that. And I'd like Dan Gilbert to speak to it. He has his hand raised because he's very knowledgeable on this, and I know just to see what he thinks about what you're saying. Tom?
Dan, yeah, by all means.
So not to add to the debate at all, but what, can you all hear me? Because it says my connection's unstable. I just want to make sure. Okay. What JP is suggesting is actually in line with what our current city ordinance and city charter states. We don't have this sort of look at second or third place votes as part of a tiebreaker. And so I would actually, I'm actually more inclined towards a system that that moves into sort of a repeating ballot situation, like you're talking about, in terms of a tiebreaker at least. Repeating ballot is a really excellent way of doing something when you have the opportunity to do it real time, and you know, remotely. I don't know how realistic that is, but it seems like something that's possible. So I do think that getting into using other ranks to do a tiebreaker is, it's a little unorthodox. I think it's better than chance, but when there is the possibility to deliberate like there is with a committee, I think it's not a bad way to go. That's all I'm gonna add.
That's interesting, because I was actually going to propose that, not the flip of the coin, but if we get a tie, like Tom, I'm trusting you on this, if you think it's fair, but if we have a tie, there's only 8 of us. We deliberate, we all say, if there's 2 candidates, if there's 3 candidates, we try it again and we vote again. And I'm thinking, if this kind of thing was up on the screen when we voted and Dan was counting, instead of us sending an email, I would just say, my first candidate is this, 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 and this. And you would put the numbers in for me. And then the next person would be called upon by Peg to make their choices. And then we do it again. That's just me. I don't know.
Councilor Coniff, I saw your hand.
So, Dan, the only pushback I've heard around doing voice votes is that because you'd have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever, the feeling is that people would rather not be influenced by whoever went before them and do a somehow a ballot that until everyone does their vote, we don't know what the person before us did. And so I don't know if that's, in this case, Dan Gilbert, if that would be an email to you and we all just go person A, person B, you get all the emails and then you read them off, or Barbara reads them off, but I think we need a third person to do this, not Barbara. So
I think it makes sense to have somebody read them off like that.
yeah.
Just so that they're all cast before
I'm happy
anyone's
to email. That makes sense, Peg, what you just said.
But I assumed that in a scenario like this, that the city council clerk, Barbara, would be reading the votes off one by one, and I would just be entering them in.
Well, that
I mean,
could work too.
I'm happy to read them too, but I just, you know.
In talking with Barbara before we got to this scenario, she just needs a way. I got the impression she would prefer someone else tell her what they are. She will record them because,
Okay.
I mean, you can also illustratively show them on screen, but she has to formally certify them in some sort of way. So I got the impression she wanted someone else to read them off. And she would.
Well, I don't mind doing both of those things. I just need a way of.
Yeah, and it's all recorded. I agree with Peg. We all send emails to Dan, he puts them in. And then we see if the tabulation works. If it doesn't work, after 2 or 3 rounds and we have a tie, maybe it's the 3rd round, I like the notion of going to another vote and deliberating and eliminating the candidates that didn't get enough votes. As Dan, and I'm going with Dan, Tom, on this because this is only 8 people voted. It is like a jury in the sense that we just have to keep debating it. I don't want to flip a coin. I think that's wrong. I think we should just keep deliberating, and I would push for my candidate just like everybody else will push for their candidate.
Okay, so before we go too far, this is interesting and I like the feedback. I do realize that, Paul, I'd called on you and you mentioned that JP had your hand up and then I never actually got to hear your thoughts on this. So if you want to, I'd say now's the time.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So this process, as it's outlined, it opens up the council to criticism and from the outside. Can you imagine if Elizabeth Warren resigned office or any member of Congress on the state, federal level, and then that legislative body were to choose her replacement? Like if Mitch McConnell chose the next representative from Massachusetts, it wouldn't go over very well and it wouldn't be legitimate. There is a mechanism in Mass General Law for this to happen, for the council to choose its own replacement, but there's also a mechanism in Mass General Law for the chief executive of a municipality to nominate a replacement. If the council is unable to resolve a tie, it is certainly feasible that remain unresolved. And that would engage the mechanism by which the chief executive, who in concept represents the elected will of the people, to nominate a candidate, a single candidate for the council to consider. And that process is already established in MGL, and it would certainly be applicable in this situation. So if there is a tie, and if it were unresolvable, if you don't have an answer to it, it's, you know, potentially embarrassing to the council, and it opens up the council to huge criticism from the public. Whereas this other mechanism could be utilized or considered in that case in order to absolve the council of this difficulty and still have a path forward.
My concern about that is that I feel like it flies in the face of what is in our charter, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
I feel like our charter very clearly says that it's to the council to choose the replacement.
Yeah.
When you have 5 people and 8 people voting for them, that has a real chance of getting messy. I am not arguing with you there. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this, but I don't believe that there's anything in our charter. While MGL would allow for that, and I'm not disputing you there, I feel like our charter is pretty clear about who they want handling this, and I'm pretty clear that it's the council. Now, I mean, I appreciate the feedback, but I don't actually feel like in the time that we have, even if we all agreed that that was the right way to do it, I don't think that we have the ability to actually make that happen, because of our charter very clearly says that the council will vote to make a replacement.
I hear
And I
that, and
think-
I appreciate that, and thank you for considering my idea. Just wanted to bring out a different view.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. JP, I see your hand.
Just for the record, I would look, do you have a copy of the charter in front of you that you could put up?
I don't, but
You don't. The reason I ask is I don't believe the word vote is in the charter. I think what the charter says is that the council shall resolve the matter, make a selection, but the wording is not to have a vote necessarily.
But what it does say, I'm sorry.
So we do have other options. I think if the council, if it was the council's will to do something different. I'm not suggesting that we have that will or that I'm suggesting it. I just wanted to be clear for the record that it doesn't say vote. Peg, you have it in front of you?
I do. So it does say that the vacancy shall be filled by the remaining members of the city council. Persons elected to fill the vacancy by the city council. You can't get elected unless the city council is voting. Persons elected to fill this vacancy by the city council shall serve only until the next regular election, at which time the vacancy shall be filled by the voters. So during the
agree.
vacancy before the next election, the vacancy is elected by the city council. You can't, the verb elected doesn't happen unless you vote.
I would agree with that interpretation. I think we set a rule which
I'm
everybody
behind it.
voted yes to, and the rule 8B is there. I'd like to get back to how we resolve a tie, and I'm ready to make a motion to use deliberation, but Tom, this was your first crack at this, so if you want to defend your particular method, go for it.
I'll defend it up to a point while also being clear that if we go in a different direction, I'm not going to be too broken up about it. This was just my attempt at coming to a conclusion, and I'll explain why I did what I did, and then I'm interested in everyone else's thoughts. My thought on this was to try and say, let's have my idea here is to say, let's have everybody state what their preferences are. And then from those preferences, let's try and read into those preferences what we can to figure out what is the outcome that would make the most people happy, right? And so my thought is that let's talk about the situation we've got on the screen here. Like, JP has a point that when the idea with ranked choice voting is that you should be able to cast a vote for somebody who might be a long shot candidate and not worry that doing so would actually, hurt the candidate that you would put second. And so that's a valid point. But my thought on the other hand is that if I have to choose okay, between 4 counselors getting their first choice or 3 counselors getting their first choice and 1 getting their second choice, that the situation where 4 people get their first choice is preferable, like just in the number of people who get what they want. That's my way of how do I interpret this in a way that gets it, in a similar way, if we talk about, that situation where there's a first round tie where one of the candidates is a lot of people's first choice and the other one is nobody's first choice, or sorry, second choice. I'm sorry, I just said something and now we're getting confused. Like, again, it's the idea that, like, if that's the situation that we run into, like, you can interpret a little bit from, like, well, this person a bunch of people like, and also a bunch of people are okay with, where this person a bunch of people like, but the people who don't really like them really, like, are not okay with them. That, to me, that's a situation where you can so my whole idea about this was to actually avoid exactly the situation which you guys are describing, where we go into, where we reach a tie and then just start deliberating on how to resolve that, and it doesn't end until somebody agrees to relent and go over to the other side. My whole idea was specifically attempting to avoid that. If we decide that that is actually better, like Dan said, like a jury, I'm fine with that. I just was specifically trying to build a situation where we cast one vote and then from there we can interpret a winner. Councillor Koff.
What if, thank you for putting this up, Dan. This is exactly what was going through my head. And you could even make the case that in that prior example, the person who had 3 1s and then got the person who was eliminated got their 2. If we had filled it all out, it may look like this. It may look like 1s and 2s for the one who had the original 3, but the one who had the 4 first place votes, everybody else may hate. And so right. You've now got this tie. So why couldn't we use weighted average then of that? And you would end up with candidate E, weighted average is like 1.5. Candidate B, weighted average is, I don't know, 3, whatever it is. Clearly, the candidate E is the most preferred based on weighted average, ergo they win. Now, I realize that's math and people's heads will spin off their axis and go crazy, but that seems fair to me because that is a representation of, what people want the most, as opposed to the first place votes.
In this
Dan,
example,
sorry, Dan Gilbert, you had suggested a similar thing when we were talking, right?
Yeah, I mean, kind of when it comes to tie breaking, I feel like sort of the sky's the limit. You're sort of outside the purity of the representation of what ranked choice voting is, which RCV is a really beautiful way of ensuring one person, one vote while taking into account preferences. Once you get into tie breaking, philosophically, I think you're looking at a whole different ballgame. So if you want to go back and look at people's votes and weight them in terms of breaking a tie, I think JP's right in that it doesn't kind of sit with the overall philosophy of RCV, but then again, you're already in the weeds. You're already in a situation where you have to break a tie. So it's.
So would it be? So are we looking at? We all do a ranking of 5 people, and at the end of it, round 1, we have a person who gets 5 votes. Thank God we're done, and somebody's elected. Yay! But if we end up at the end of the first round with 4 and 4, we stop all ranked choice voting at that point. We take candidate B and candidate E. Everybody else is off to the side. Those 2 now are our only choices, and we maybe do you can only pick 1 now of that.
I could respond to that, but first I saw Councilor Rist had his hand up.
Oh, I thought there was more than one round in our first tabulation. I'll use that term. In other words, there's ranked choice voting math that happens. If we end up after 2 or 3 rounds and we're like this, the 4 to 4, then we have a situation. But going back to what Peg said before, if I'm looking at this, I'm not a rocket scientist. Candidate E is the preferred candidate with ones and twos. If
So maybe that's
the
what we
case,
do
but
is we say,
I don't know. I just saying it looks like that to me. But I don't know.
okay. Well, so I sort of like this idea that Peg's suggesting, that what you do is if there's a tie, you take the average of the preference numbers. I don't know exactly the right way to write that, but right, that clearly, like, yeah, it would be, yeah, 3 for candidate B and 1.5 for candidate E. That person is clearly the one who the council feels the best about. And so that's the person who wins. Does anyone have an objection to that idea?
JP.
JP does, but
Yes, I do. I keep raising my hand, Tom, and you don't acknowledge.
I'm
Maybe
sorry, I
off
can
the
only see
screen.
because you got the sidebar. It's just the stupid Zoom thing. Here,
Okay, so can you hear me?
yep.
I think in the votes you're counting between candidates B and E, that is for a 5-way race. That's how everybody landed.
Mhm.
This is now not a 5-way race, but a 2-person race. And therefore, the fairest and most legitimate way to resolve is to go back to the council, make a 2-person, out of 2 folks, make 1 selection. Dan?
But okay, in this case, if you're to do it that way, JP, like, so okay, so right here I've voted for candidate E, right? And you voted for candidate B. Like, if we say, all right, well, these are down to these 2 people, let's take a vote, aren't we just going to, like, what I'm trying to avoid is a situation where we just infinitely vote for the same people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if I here have decided I really don't like candidate B at all, I'm just going to keep casting my vote over and over for candidate E. I'm never going to, like, there's no reason why I'm going to fold on that. Maybe you will, because in this hypothetical scenario, you're actually pretty okay with candidate E. But like, I think that if we can say from people's rankings something about their relative preferences, and we can use that to break a tie rather than just yelling at each other until one of us gives up, I think that's
that's true.
I think that's good. Councilor Kwasniewski.
The difficulty I foresee is that you will not have, given the formula you've now outlined, a true ranked choice voting preference among all the candidates, because everybody has to consider, what if there's a tie? I don't want my vote to go against the candidate. So I think that skews everything, and I would be opposed to voting with anything that wouldn't be fair to everybody.
Councilor Rist.
I don't agree, JP. I don't agree that it's unfair. The average that Peg brought up, I'm looking at this example. It tells me the candidate E has the best preferences amongst the 8 councilors. And if you did some math, it defends that. It actually makes that sense.
Dan, I would ask.
I just don't, I'm sorry, I'm speaking. I won't vote. I don't feel comfortable. I would do the deliberative method, but I don't agree with you that this takes away the ranked choice voting, because we are voting by choosing the candidates this way. I could go either way, but I'd like to just, given Peg's time, I'd like to resolve this now. Which way do you want to go? I'm okay with Tom. And JP, you could at the meeting bring up your minority report, but I just, point of order, I'd like the rules committee to make a decision here. We're going to have to do this again on Wednesday before the meeting. I don't know. I don't think we can.
We have an expert here. I would like to hear from Dan, if we may.
Dan Gilbert.
Dan Gilbert.
This is a tough one. I think, and I spoke to Tom about this a little bit the other day. If you look at Robert's Rules of Order, what that recommends and it does recommend ranked choice voting very highly, but it recommends ranked choice voting for situations that are not real time and deliberative. So, you know, kind of my first thought about this committee vote, and to be perfectly frank, was why not do a repeating ballot? And you can have a rule in that repeating ballot that whoever has the fewest votes is eliminated. So, you know, if you're talking, in my opinion, if you're talking about breaking ties using a repeating ballot deliberatively, then it may just make sense to start that way. Now you don't get a record of everybody's preference from the beginning that way. However, it's a little bit more in the nature of a small committee that is able to debate, deliberate, make new rules for the vote if need be. You know, this is how Jefferson was elected president over 36 rounds of repeated balloting. So, I mean, this is something that a deliberative body can do when you're able to take there and either do a roll call or a secret ballot and then read them out. You know, I really appreciate what Tom is trying to do with this, which is to do one vote and come to a preferential decision. With a small body, it's harder, and you really get a much higher likelihood of ties. Typically in ranked choice voting, what happens is when you get a tie that cannot be determined by the previous round, like you're going all the way back to round one and it's still tied, you do it by lot. You know, that's a coin flip. I think JP makes a good point that you're kind of having to vote strategically, assuming that there might be a tie. And I do think that compromises the logic of this a little bit, in the sense that when you're doing an RCV election, it's really nice to not have to be strategic. You can really vote your heart, you know? So knowing that those weighted averages will come into play, it does change things a little bit in a strategic voting way. Does it compromise the whole exercise? No. As long as you set up the rules in advance and you follow them, then the election is legitimate, you know, as long as everyone's aware of what those rules are. So, you know, like I said, it's a little bit of a philosophical debate there, but, you know, I think either one of these could go fine as long as the rules are set in advance. But if you're going to go to a deliberative tie-breaking method, I think my recommendation would be just start with repeated balloting. And, you know, if there's no majority, you know, can eliminate the last place people and hold another vote and keep voting until there's a majority.
Well, regardless of how many ties there are.
Councilor,
Maybe it's two,
I
two,
saw
two,
Councilor
two.
Coniff had her hand for a while.
I would just-
So, I like where you're going, Dan. So in the scenario of a repeating ballot, we would have ballot one, we'll call it.
Mhm.
And let's say everybody can only vote for one person.
Mhm.
And they email Dan, because nobody wants to do a voice vote because we're all nervous.
I'm not.
I know, but others are, Dan. So Dan Gilbert will get 8 emails. He will then say, Councillor Coniff votes for candidate A. Councillor Derby votes for candidate A. Councillor Gomez votes for candidate B. Kwasinski, candidate C. Peak, candidate B, you know, and so on. And so we'll just go in here. Risk can be A and whatever. So no one will get 5 votes. So they could, I mean, they might, but so you're suggesting we would have at the end of this, we would have someone who had 3, 3, 1, and 1. The 2 1s drop out because they didn't get enough, right?
Right.
You take the 2 3s and you wipe the slate clean and you go, okay, now it's between A and B, pick one. And then we vote and we end up with 4 and 4. Now it's between A and B, revote, we do a little lobbying, we do a little discussion, we revote. And right around midnight, we all get very tired because we're still at 4 and 4. And so then the scenario becomes, we flip a coin, which on my dead body, we're gonna pick a city councilor because we flipped a coin. I hate that. I'm sorry, JP, but that seems so arbitrary.
I'll never agree to that.
That seems very arbitrary and kind of pointless. Why don't we just do it on the first round? So we end up with 4 and 4 and 4 and 4, to Tom's point. Is there a point at which, are you just saying we could conceivably go 36 rounds till we get to someone weakening and saying, oh, for God's sakes, I'll just vote for A, and here we are? I mean, is that kind of how we're envisioning it?
As a council, able to introduce new amendments to your process. So you can say, you can theoretically, but yes, I mean, there's not really a way around it. I mean, I think that's why, the vice president breaks ties in the Senate. It's because with an
I like that. I'll break the tie.
Yeah, the way we're structured, everybody has an equal vote. Okay.
I think
I'll
Councilor
take my hand down.
my feeling is that we're kind of, my feeling is Dan makes a great point. After the rounds of ranked choice voting, if we have a tie, we eliminate the people, the rule would say we will go into a deliberative ballot, eliminating the candidates with the least votes in each round until we until we have a majority vote. And it may take a while, I agree, but I just don't see any other solution. And I go back to the fact that if we did not have this rule with ranked choice voting, that's what we'd be doing now. We'd be deliberating and we'd be constantly debating, okay, well, I like so-and-so and I'd like you guys to consider this and that. And that's what we do. And we have to do it in an open meeting, and that's the way it goes. But I won't do a coin flip. And I know we might get tired of it, but I think that's the only way we can do it. I think Dan makes a great point. We are a small body committee, and we do a deliberative vote until the tie is broken. And when we get down to just 2 people, we have to keep going until one of them gets 5 votes.
So, and I just want to point this out for a second, that like, if that's the way that the council wants to go on this, I'm really like, the difference between a repeated ballot and a ranked choice ballot, they achieve the same fundamental thing for me, which is that you can cast your vote, like that there's not a conversation right now about don't vote for that person because you're just going to be helping this other person to win. That's the fundamental thing that I don't like about the way that, if we were to just say that the person who gets the most votes is elected or something like that. We don't want that kind of thing. We don't want concern about spoilers and vote splitting and yada, yada, yada. So that's the fundamental thing that I am most concerned about. And either of these propositions does solve this. My thing is, like, if we're talking about like the situation we talk about where three of these candidates get eliminated, we're down to 2 of them. One is clearly the last choice of 4 of the counselors. The other one is the second choice of 4 of the counselors. Why is it that like hours of just arguing why can't we take a signal from the way that vote came in? That's my question. If we decide that hours of deliberating makes more sense than trying to pull any signal out of a ranked ballot, then I'm okay, like we'll do it. I'll have to rewrite this whole thing on the spot, but we'll do it. But that's for me, it seems not only more efficient, but also in a way fairer to try and figure this out, to try and pull some sort of signal out of the ballot. Councilor Kwasinski, I saw your hand.
Again, I think as efficient as the process would be, it does assume preference based on 5 candidates and not the preference based on 2 candidates. And if the ranked choice process brings you down, let's say, to 2 candidates, then you go into your traditional balloting, repeating ballot process. And I agree with you, Dan. I would much prefer to have that repeating process occur and resolve that way than to do any tiebreaker like a flip of a coin. But I was trying to make something out there, put something out there that gave us that option. The other, if we found ourselves in this situation, we could make other proposals after many ballots, and we could amend the process at that point. But I think we should give it a shot and try to see if we can come to resolution, and hopefully we'll be able to make it work.
What I am really nervous about, just throwing it out there, I'm very nervous about the idea of us writing new rules on the spot, because look at us right now working on this rule. We're coming up on an hour into this. Like, that's not 9 people. That I actually don't know if like in the heat of the moment, like I don't actually, no offense guys, I don't actually feel super comfortable that we will have the ability to actually explore all the ramifications of the rules we're setting in the moment, if that's what it comes down to.
What I'm suggesting is that I think you're going to see, Tom, a situation where somebody says, hey, yes, let's flip a coin because we're done with this, or let's meet again in 2 days, or let's have the mayor decide and be a tiebreaker vote because we're not breaking the tie. Let's have somebody else be a tiebreaker, but not to change the rules in the process by doing something altogether different, just to resolve the 2-person or whatever the tie is.
Peg, since you have to go soon, how do you feel about all this? I mean, I feel like I'm at a deliberative vote after a tie, repeating deliberative vote until a candidate receives 5 votes. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah,
I'm hearing Dan Gilbert a lot in my head, and I don't disagree, Tom. There's math there that might work, but
I'm not, and Dan Gilbert, I think this is what you said, that if we get to a place using ranked choice voting where we're at a tie, now we use repeating ballots. Did you say, why don't you just start with repeating ballots and forget the ranked choice voting? Like, start your very first vote with 1, 2, 3, pick one of the 5. Is that what you were saying? Did I misinterpret that?
Yeah, no, that is what I was saying. Yep.
Okay.
I mean, I listen, I love ranked choice voting. But I think when you have a deliberative body that can do real-time votes, repeated balloting is better. I mean, I think it's a really good way to go. I think the benefit of using RCV in this particular vote is that it may resolve things quicker and faster. You may, instead of having to do 3 or 4 repeating things with debate and potentially eliminating people, you might just have a winner right away. But obviously, if you are using repeated balloting to break ties, you may have a situation that really drags on and is complicated.
well, we don't have a lot of time. What do you want to do, Peg?
Well, I can stay for another 10 or 15 minutes.
I wouldn't mind doing 1 deliberative ballot at the beginning and then moving to ranked choice voting after that.
No, it's got to be one or the other. That's sort of
Okay.
I am on this for no other reason than because at some point, and I don't know how exactly we're going to pull this off, but at some point, I'm going to have to rewrite this rule, right? Like we say something like deliberative ballot, or you know, but like I need to actually, like, there needs to be a rule for this. Like we need to actually come up with like this in writing.
I wrote something that might work, which I think is, and I could just change the language a little bit. Can you let me share my screen and drop this screen down?
Make you the co-host.
Dan has to stop sharing so I can share.
Oh.
Give me a second, I find it. That's not it. I apologize. It'll take me a minute. I have to get up in my... Oh, darn it, what happened? Are you seeing this now?
Yeah.
That's my language at the bottom here. Repeated, we could put in the words repeated.
But the thing is, this entire language needs to get scrapped if this is what we're doing. It says,
Oh, where you put your language in here, if any at point, then we put this in instead or something like this. In other words, this is about the tie. It's not about changing. The ranked choice voting still happens.
but that's not what Dan's suggesting.
Yeah, I do want to make a quick point, which is that when it's a little bit confusing talking about a tie, because when you're doing a ranked choice voting, when you have a tie, it's between the two last place candidates as to who's getting eliminated. And that applies even up until, that can even apply in the first round. Like your idea of a tie of a 4-4, you are deciding who to eliminate because you have two last place candidates because everyone else has been eliminated because they got 0 votes, right? So the idea is if you're doing a ranked choice vote, it could be that you have a 3-3-1-1 after the first round, right? So then you have to figure out how to break that tie, not between the top two, but between the bottom two.
I don't agree. You have two top candidates. Why can't we do that? Like
Because if
you
you're
said,
doing
You can.
so why can't the two that have 3-3 be the candidates we deliberate over?
Simply because that's not how ranked choice voting works. If you're not using ranked
Right.
choice voting, you can have whatever kinds of repeating ballot rules you want. But if you're doing ranked choice voting, somebody needs to get a majority and you have to eliminate people in rounds to do that. So what you're debating then, if you are using ranked choice voting, you are deliberating who of the 1 votes to eliminate.
How do we
First.
write this? I don't know.
Does that make sense to folks?
It does, Dan.
It does. If you give me what you want me to write, I can write it. I just think
Well,
I'd like to do the deliberative vote in the case of a tie, repeating ballots. That's my position right now. I could be changed. I mean, we have to resolve this pretty soon.
Councilor Coniff.
So I do not like the idea of going through ranked choice voting and then getting to a tie and then doing ballots, because the way you got to the tie in ranked choice voting is very different than just picking between 2 people. And I think it then speaks to that 1-1-5-5-5-5-5 and 1-1-2-2-2-2-2. And I think we need to get to a place, and it feels like we either do all ballots, starting with the very first round of here's 5 people, pick one. And if we don't get 5 votes out of that round, do we take the top 2? Or do we take, how many do we take, Dan?
Those rules are up to you. So
Okay.
so unfortunately there isn't, so just to kind of lay out the complexity here is what this discussion is really about is not about ranked choice voting or repeated balloting. It's about how to break ties.
Okay.
And there isn't, unfortunately, an easy answer. It's not one or the other. You're going to have to figure out how you're going to break a tie in either situation. So it's not, there's no easy answer. Sorry.
So if we go to just deliberative ballots, forget the ranked choice voting for now, because I think, unfortunately, Tom, you found a potential issue with it when it comes to ties. If we go to deliberative ballots and we don't have anybody getting 5 votes, we debate and we do it again. That's what repeated balloting does. We don't eliminate anybody. We all see that there's 4 votes for candidate A and 2 votes for candidate B and 2 votes for candidate C, and we go back in and we do it again.
So what you can do.
I guess that's what we can do. I mean, I think if we leave this rule in place, I don't have a solution to resolving ties unless we just go with what Tom has written here. Right now, I could do anything because I don't know I don't know. I really don't know. I wouldn't mind going back to deliberative voting.
So,
what this rule wants to present?
okay, so
I don't know, Tom.
if we do it through ranked choice voting, I think the best way to do it is the way that Peg suggested, where a tie gets broken by a weighted average of the preferences. If we're throwing that out entirely and starting anew, which by the way, just for the record, I think is insane at 6 p.m. on a Monday, 2 days before the election. If you guys have a problem with this, we should have brought it up sometime before now. And I think this whole thing is ridiculous. But with
Okay,
that
I agree.
said, like, I just think, like, why did we pass this in the first place if you didn't like it? That's my sort of, you were all there.
I'm being influenced by your buddy, Dan Gilbert. I'm sorry, Tom. I agree with you. We should have done this earlier.
Yeah, so here we are. If we want to scrap this whole thing, then I would at least suggest that we keep in the general principle that in the case that nobody gets a majority, the candidate with the least votes is automatically eliminated to go into the next round, because that does speed things up, and it's very much in Robert's rules that that's a suggestion. But in terms of actually setting that up, I'm not prepared to write that rule because I didn't think that's how this meeting was going to go. So somebody else can, I don't even know, like, I don't know how to.
If we go with Peg's suggestion, do we have to write that somehow, Tim?
Yeah, but I can write that. It'll take me 5 minutes. But what I'm saying is, like, if you guys want to go in a different direction with this, you guys are, I don't know how, like, how process wise we get something out of this committee in the next 10 minutes that then can then go to the city council for us to vote on before this vote in 2 days. And we can't meet again because we don't have time to publish an agenda. So, like, if that's what we're doing, then we need to buckle down and start writing right now.
So can I add something real quick? You know, moving to, they're not altogether very different proposals, because moving to a repeated balloting scenario, if you say, oh, we're going to drop the candidate with the fewest votes and do repeated balloting, you're kind of doing ranked choice voting, right? How do you decide who to drop if 2 candidates have 1 vote, right? You're still dealing with a tiebreaker. So, you know, that is not a wholly different scenario. They're very, very similar scenarios. I mean, part of the reason why repeated balloting is a nice way of doing things is because it is very, very similar to ranked choice voting. I mean, these are not different ideas. They are conceptually very, very similar, and you have to decide how to break the ties in either one. This is the same problem in both. So.
Yeah, I just don't have the language, right? So
right. Well, no. So Tom's tie-breaking proposal is sort of the weighted average. I mean, it's not a weighted average, but it's a looking sequentially. Peg's idea is to use a weighted average. I mean, those are ways that you can go about tie-breaking. I'm less of an expert at tie-breaking than I am on on voting methods. So.
I don't agree that it's unfair. I don't agree that if we keep Tom's language as it is, I think it's in the realm of ranked choice voting, which is what we all agreed to. I'm happy to do it. I mean, I am at a loss as to how, other than Tom's, we do this. Writing, I don't know.
I'm fine if I would be completely fine if we left this language, maybe punched it up a little bit to be very, very clear about, this is a little bit of word soup in terms of how we get to the final. So I think it's, I'm fine, you know, Tom, I'm fine with going that way. I also am being influenced by the other people that are in this meeting that are not part of the committee. And, you know, if we want to go with ranked choice voting, which you're right, the council voted this in a year and a half ago, whatever it was. So then let's use it for all its ugliness. And if it ends up not being as perfect as it can be, then we change it the next time this scenario comes up. But you know, I don't think that it will be inherently grossly unfair. You know, I have a feeling it'll be pretty clear on what's going to happen, but you know, I don't want to change it right now a lot when we haven't even used it once.
Well,
Yeah.
the one thing I would change if it were up to me is I would switch to your idea about how to break ties because it's better than mine.
Yes.
A weighted
Otherwise,
average,
yeah,
using a
if I
weighted
can-
average.
Can I take over?
Or even just an average.
Take over the screen, Tom, and write it, please.
That's what I just did. If I can share my screen. If this is, so just, if we're doing what you guys are suggesting with the repeated ballots, this is what I came up with just on the spot. Is voting shall be resolved via repeated ballots. In each round of voting, if there is no majority, then the candidate with the least votes is eliminated. If there is a tie between last place choices to be, or last place candidates, I guess, to be eliminated, then a vote shall be held to eliminate one candidate, right? So that if we get into the first round and there's 3 people with 1 vote, then we need to take a vote right there to eliminate one of them. And then you just keep going into the next round. That's one way you could do it. Going into this, was not prepared to write this, so I don't have anything better than that. The other option, I'll sort of switch to another thing. New share, there we go. This is the language that we currently have, and you could just say, if at any point beyond the first round a tie among preferred candidates shall impede the process.
Eliminate last ranked candidates. So
Okay,
the tie is between who you're going to eliminate.
Or, yeah, against lowest candidates, I guess.
Ranking.
Because it's not really last ranked, it's who had the least votes.
Right. Tie among.
Candidate with the least votes.
With the least votes
Yeah.
shall impede the process. The candidate with the, I'm just put this here mathematically and we can figure out how to put it up, but like, it would be like with the lowest average of preferences will be eliminated.
The highest.
Oh, with the
No, lowest.
So it would be the highest, because if you have a bunch of 5th places, then you should be the one getting eliminated.
Oh, right, gosh.
So that's saying that
Be eliminated.
if that's where you go with it, then yeah, we just look at it. If you're the first place for 4 people, but the 5th place for the other 4, then you're the one that loses over the person who's first place to 4 people and second place to the other.
Yeah.
In that example that Dan had shown earlier.
Yeah, like that example that Dan showed. So it looks like basically, Peg, I'm trying to be respectful of your time here. Can we as a committee, like just go around, like, I feel like we have to go in one of these directions at this point, because one thing that I think is really important is that I got people today hitting me up being like, hey, I know that you really like this person. Could I ask for you to think about this person as your second choice? So I don't actually feel like the repeated ballots screws with that, but we have to choose one of these things because people are like campaigning for counselors with the expectation that like preferences are going to transfer in this election.
I agree. I think out of respect for the remaining counselors who voted this in a year ago, we keep ranked choice voting as our option. And if we need to eliminate ties, and if the only tie we're going to eliminate is the least votes, then let's do it using averages. Are we saying that if we get to a tie where at the end of all the rounds we have 2 people with 4, are we saying we would also break that tie using averages?
Well, in this
I'm fine with
proposal,
that.
yes. no, I'm willing to go in a different direction with this, but in this proposal, yes, because in this proposal, it's the same concept where, okay, is neither one has a majority yet. So in this round, we once again eliminate a candidate, right? And then once that candidate's eliminated, then there's only one standing and they're automatically the winner. So that, yes, in that case, like we would basically like you would just read it over and be like, based on these preferences, one of these people is insanely polarizing and the other one isn't. Ergo, we don't even need to debate this. This is the one who's going to win.
Mhm. And I, not to throw a wet blanket on this entire thing, but we did a really easy example of 1s and 5s and 2s and 5s. There could be 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, we could end up with another average tie.
You could.
And then what do we do?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, why
Can I
not in
suggest
the
something?
final round, go ahead and have the
Ballot.
method suggested, the ballot for the final round?
Well, how
I
about
would
this?
suggest
So-
that if we end up, we use this method, there's two things that will happen.
Mhm.
We vote as a council to accept the end result of this.
Right.
If people don't like it, then we vote as a council to set aside this because it's a rule. We can vote at the time and go into deliberative balloting to break the tie. But I like that we have this. And at the end of it, I'd make a motion to accept, if this ends up being what happens,
Mhm.
to accept it.
Sure.
And if that doesn't pass the council, then I would suggest the alternative would be to do deliberative repeated ballots to break the tie. So
All right.
all I'm saying is at the moment,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to see what happens and then we'll have to decide. At least the three of us have ideas in our head on how we can do this, the repeated balloting and this method. Let's try this method. If everybody hates it after it's done, because Dan's gonna show it all and show the weighted average and people don't like it, you know, I think there needs to be a motion to accept the tie-breaking ballot as it's forward.
So
And
Dan,
I
while
would
you were
make that motion
talking,
and
I
see what
threw
happens.
another sentence in to try and accommodate what you're saying is like like if a tie still remains, the council shall deliberate and take a vote to eliminate a single candidate. Does
There you go. That works.
that work for you?
Yep.
And if we don't get that, if we fight till 2 a.m., then we just don't have a counselor, I guess. I don't know.
We move to have the vote continued on November 4th. Let's hope that doesn't happen, because we can't set another meeting. We
Well,
just have
I
to
mean,
keep going.
you know, not for
We're looking
nothing,
at worst case scenario. Let's
Me.
hope. Ah!
not for nothing, but in Robert's rules, if you don't get to 5, it's done. Like those candidates are not preferred and you start all over. Like you have to get to 5 for the vote to count. If you never ever get to 5, then the question on the floor never gets answered and it's over.
Right.
And then we
just-
renominate and we do it again.
Right.
And just to sort of de-escalate for a moment, I'm 90% sure none of this stuff is
I
going to
agree.
Me too.
I'm 90% sure none of this stuff's going to happen, but 90 isn't 100. And
Exactly.
really, really don't want to see happen is a situation where we're like, even if I came up with a rule that I personally hated, I would prefer that to a situation where we're suddenly caught flat-footed trying to come up with rules on the spot to decide how to deal with an ambiguous situation. I think that makes the council look just stupid. Like, I just don't think, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't think that that's a good look. So I just think it's important that we have our agreements here. Dan, I'm going to call on you, but I've noticed that Paul's had his hand up for a while and we've been in like counselor. No, okay.
We're deliberating now. Point of order, I'd like to get this voted on. And I'd like I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think we should vote on this now. And I know Dan Gilbert and Paul and JP and Omar have lots of things to say, but we're under the gun of time. And I'd like us to come up with something here. If you don't think we're there, then the two of us are going to have to vote on it because Peg has to leave.
I understand that, Dan. Can I just first ask Dan Gilbert, does anything in what's currently on the screen look like bad to you?
I would just change highest average of preferences to highest average of all rankings.
Oh, yeah, great. That makes sense. Okay, well, I respect your point of order and will entertain a motion.
I move we accept Rule 8B amended as presented this evening on the screen in front of us.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. I'm sorry, I just realized there's one last point that I do. It's really uncontroversial. That I did kind of want to make where it says clerk of the council, I wanted to put where it says recorded and tabulated by the clerk of the council or their designee, allowing Dan to even be involved in this whole thing. Does that make sense?
I would remove my motion and do a new motion to accept the amended Rule 8B as presented by Councilor Peak this evening.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion, a second. All in favor, Councilor Coniff,
Yes.
Councilor Rist.
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. That was a wild ride, guys. Really, really interesting thoughts, and I appreciate everybody's input. Sorry we couldn't reach something that we all love, but I think this will do the trick this time. And if we want to come back here and have a deeper discussion about what worked and what didn't, after this vote, I very much am open to having that conversation.
I think it also, as Paul brought up, it points to charter change that might be necessary to make this a little better. Because it's just never happened. In my 25 years on the council, we've never had this situation. And of course, it has to happen now. I think ranked choice voting is the better way to go. And I really don't think a tie vote will happen. And if it doesn't happen, we should look at our rule, because we're not going to make a charter change before the next election. I just hope there's a lot of at-large, let's say, a lot of candidates to choose from in any particular resignation. Let's hope there isn't resignation. So
Right.
I'm pretty happy that we have 5 candidates now. That says a lot that people want.
Got an amazing slate, really. So there's that at least.
Smile, Paul.
All right.
Motion to
Great.
adjourn.
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys. Omar, you talk too much.
All right. I've got
Dan, Rist,
Yeah, shut up.
there is a motion on the floor to adjourn.
I heard a motion. and I-
Second.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
All in favor, Councilor Coniff.
Yes.
Aye.
Councilor Rist.
Yes.
I'll vote
Bye,
yes
guys.
as well. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Tom, you're gonna send this to the clerk to be,
Yeah, I'll
or we're
send
gonna present it at the council, because we'll just have to share the screen and present it.
whatever. Oh, yeah, because it's probably too late to actually get it on the agenda.
No, just send it to everybody so they see it, they could read it, and
Okay,
then
I'll
we'll,
send it out to everybody and to Barb right now, and then we'll go from there.
and as far as I know, what you guys have decided is Dan's gonna be the one to tabulate all this, because Barb just wants to report it.
Yep.
In your particular graph that you were using, Dan, is that how we'll do it? Like,
Mhm.
you'll get an email from me and you'll put in my names in order?
Yeah, and either I'll read it, or if Barbara was reading it out, I can record it in this, but I'm happy to read it too, however you guys want to do it.
Okay.
I'll leave that up to
That'll be a
Peg. I
good
think you
process.
guys should talk, Tom, you and Dan should talk to Peg and make sure we're on the same page with how that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I
Because
think we are.
I have no problem reading it. We're gonna have to, if Barb reads it or Dan reads it, it's still going to be public record, so. All right, we just
Okay.
need your email, Dan.
Or maybe we send it to Barb and then she works it out with Dan. I don't know. Well, they can figure that whole aspect out.
All right, thanks a
I'll
lot.
circle
See you
back to
guys.
Peg and make
Have a
sure
good evening.
Tom, before we go, can you forward me the full names of all of the candidates?
Yes,
Just because I want to have them in here, like, and spelled right.
yes, I will do that.
Cool.
Cool, thanks.
All right, see ya.